The evening began like any other. I was lounging on my couch, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when my stomach growled loudly. I realized I hadn't eaten since breakfast, and it was already nearing 8 p.m. Cooking was out of the question. I was too tired and lazy for that. Instead, I decided to order some food. A new place called Dave's Delights had recently opened up nearby, and their menu looked appealing. I quickly placed an order for a burger, fries, and a shake through a popular food delivery app. The app estimated that the food would arrive in 30 minutes. As I waited, I absent-mindedly watched TV, not paying much attention to the show. After about 20 minutes, I got a notification. "Your delivery is on its way." I sighed with relief, looking forward to satisfying my hunger. Another 15 minutes passed, and there was still no sign of the delivery. I opened the app to check the status and saw that the driver was just a few blocks away. I decided to be patient and give it a few more minutes. But those few minutes turned into 10 and then 20. Now, I was really hungry and starting to get irritated. I called the delivery driver, a man named Jake according to the app. The phone rang several times before going to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. Frustration mounting, I contacted the restaurant. The manager, Dave himself, answered the phone. "Hi, this is Dave from Dave's Delights. How can I help you?" "Hi, I ordered a burger, fries, and a shake over an hour ago, but I haven't received it yet." The driver isn't answering his phone either. "Oh, I'm really sorry about that," Dave said. "Let me check on your order." There was a pause as he put me on hold. After a couple of minutes, he came back on the line. "It looks like Jake picked up your order about 45 minutes ago. He should have been there by now. Let me try to contact him." I thanked him and hung up. I waited for another 10 minutes, but there was no update from the app or Dave. I was about to call the restaurant again when my phone rang. It was Dave. "Hey, I tried calling Jake, but he didn't answer. This is very unusual. He's one of our most reliable drivers. I'll try to send another driver with a fresh order for you right away, on the house." I appreciated the gesture, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Where could Jake have gone? It wasn't like my place was hard to find. About 30 minutes later, there was finally a knock on my door. I opened it to find a different delivery driver standing there, holding my food. He apologized for the delay and handed me the bag. I took it and thanked him, but my mind was still on Jake. I asked the new driver if he had heard anything about him, but he just shook his head, saying he had been called in last minute to make the delivery. I closed the door and sat down to eat, but my appetite had waned. I kept thinking about Jake. Was he okay? Should I call the police? I decided to give it a bit more time, hoping I'd hear something soon. Just as I finished my meal, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Dave. "Hi, we still haven't been able to contact Jake. We've reported him as a missing person. Please let us know if he tries to contact you or if you hear anything." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was no longer just an irritating delay. Person was missing. I texted back, expressing my concern and promising to keep an eye out for any information. The night was long and restless. I kept checking my phone, hoping for an update, but there was nothing. Morning came and still no news. I couldn't focus on my work. My mind kept wandering back to Jake. What could have happened to him? Days turned into weeks, and there was still no sign of Jake. He had vanished without a trace. The police conducted an investigation, but they found no leads. It was like he had simply disappeared off the face of the earth. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of unease every time I thought about that night. The mystery of Jake's disappearance haunted me. I stopped using that food delivery app and even stopped ordering takeout altogether. Every knock at the door sent a shiver down my spine, reminding me of the driver who went out to deliver a meal and never came back. I've been delivering food for a while now. It's usually easy money, just driving around and handing over bags of warm food. But last Friday night was different. It started like any other night, but by the end, I was terrified. It was around 10 p.m., and I got an order from a Chinese place I delivered from a million times before. The delivery address was in a part of town I didn't know too well, but I punched it into my GPS and headed out. The drive was uneventful until I turned onto a dark, narrow road. The streetlights were few and far between, casting long shadows across the pavement. I didn't think much of it. I'd been down plenty of dark roads before. I pulled up to the address, a small house set back from the road. The house looked run down, with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. There were no lights on inside, and the place looked deserted. I double-checked the address on my phone. This was the place. I got out of the car, grabbed the bag of food, and walked up to the front door. The porch creaked under my feet, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I rang the doorbell and waited. No answer. I rang it again and knocked on the door for good measure. After what felt like forever, I heard footsteps inside. The door opened a crack, and a face appeared in the gap. It was an older woman, her eyes wide and nervous. "Food delivery," I said, holding up the bag. She glanced at the bag, then back at me. "Thank you," she whispered, barely opening the door enough to slip her hand out. She took the bag and disappeared, shutting the door quickly. Something about the whole interaction felt off. Usually, people are happy to get their food, but she seemed scared. I shrugged it off and headed back to my car. As I was getting in, I heard a noise from the house. It sounded like a muffled scream. I froze. Maybe I was imagining things. I listened for a moment, but the night was silent. I got into my car and started the engine. Just as I was about to pull away, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look and saw a figure standing in the window, watching me. It was a man, tall and thin, with a blank expression on his face. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to drive away and forget about it, but another part of me couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I pulled out my phone and called the police. I explained what I'd seen and heard, and they said they'd send someone to check it out. I waited in my car, feeling more and more uneasy. After about 10 minutes, a police car pulled up. 2 officers got out and approached the house. I watched as they knocked on the door. The same woman answered, but this time, she seemed even more nervous. The officers spoke to her for a few minutes. Then one of them gestured for me to come over. I got out of the car and walked up to them. The woman wouldn't look at me, her eyes fixed on the ground. "Is this the delivery driver?" one of the officers asked. The woman nodded. "Sir, did you hear or see anything unusual?" the officer asked me. I told them about the muffled scream and the man in the window. The officer turned to the woman. "Ma'am, is there anyone else in the house?" She shook her head quickly, but her eyes darted to the window where I'd seen the man. The officers exchanged a look. "Ma'am, we're going to need to take a look inside," the officer said gently. The woman's face went pale, and she stepped aside. The officers entered the house, and I could hear them moving around inside. A few minutes later, they came back out, looking serious. "We found a man inside," one of the officers said. "He's not supposed to be here. We're taking him into custody." The woman looked relieved but still scared. I found out later that the man was her ex-husband, and he had been stalking her for weeks. She had been too afraid to call the police herself, but my delivery and the strange noises I heard gave her the chance to get help. I drove away, my hands shaking. I've had some strange deliveries before, but nothing like that. I'm just glad I listened to my gut and called the police. Who knows what might have happened if I hadn't? I stared at my phone, trying to make sense of the address. It was way out in the suburbs, a place I didn't usually go. The pay was good, though, so I accepted the delivery. It was my last order of the night, and I just wanted to get it over with and go home. The GPS took me down dark, winding roads. The houses became fewer and farther apart. Trees lined the street, their branches forming eerie shapes in the dim light of my car's headlights. I shivered but told myself it was just my imagination. The house finally came into view. It was an old two-story place with peeling paint and overgrown weeds. I parked in the driveway and grabbed the bag of food from the passenger seat. The place looked abandoned, but the lights were on. I hoped this wouldn't be some prank. I walked up the creaky steps and rang the doorbell. It echoed through the house, but no one answered. I waited a minute, then rang it again. Still nothing. Annoyed, I pulled out my phone to call the customer, but there was no signal. I cursed under my breath and knocked on the door, harder this time. The door creaked open slightly, and a sliver of light spilled out. I pushed it open a bit more and called out, "Hello? Your food's here." No response. I hesitated, wondering if I should just leave the food on the porch. But something made me step inside. The air inside was musty, and the house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I called out again, louder this time. "Hello? I'm with Delivery Dash. Your food's here." From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A shadow flitted across the hallway. My heart pounded, but I told myself it was just my nerves. "Hello? I'm just gonna leave your food here." I set the bag down on a small table by the door. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper. It was so soft I almost missed it. "Help me." The voice was weak, and it sent chills down my spine. I turned towards the sound, squinting into the darkness. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking. No answer. I should have left right then, but something compelled me to move deeper into the house. I walked down the hallway, my footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. The whisper came again, a little louder this time. "Help me." It was coming from the basement. I found the door and opened it, peering down the dark staircase. My phone's flashlight was weak, but it was better than nothing. I descended the stairs, my heart racing. At the bottom, I saw an old man lying on the floor. He looked frail and terrified. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Thank God," he rasped. "Please help." I rushed to his side. "What happened? Are you hurt?" He grabbed my arm with surprising strength. He's still here," the old man whispered. "He locked me down here. Please, you have to stop him." I didn't understand, but there was no time to ask questions. I helped him to his feet and half carried him up the stairs. Just as we reached the top, I heard the front door slam shut. My blood ran cold. I looked around frantically. "Where can we go? Where's safe?" The old man pointed to a room down the hall. We hurried inside, and I locked the door behind us. We could hear heavy footsteps coming towards us. The old man slumped against the wall, breathing heavily. He's coming. We have to hide." There was nowhere to hide. The room was empty except for a closet. I helped the old man inside and shut the door just as the footsteps stopped outside. The doorknob rattled, and then the door burst open. A tall, burly man stood there, his face twisted with rage. "You think you can hide from me?" he growled. I pressed myself against the closet door, praying he wouldn't find us. But he was methodical, searching every corner of the room. I could hear the old man's labored breathing beside me. Finally, the closet door swung open, and the man grabbed me by the collar. "What are you doing here?" he snarled. I stammered, trying to think of an excuse. I was just delivering food. I didn't mean to." He shoved me aside and reached for the old man. "You're coming with me," he said coldly. But the old man fought back with surprising strength, and in the struggle, I managed to grab a heavy lamp from the bedside table. I swung it with all my might, hitting the burly man on the head. He collapsed unconscious. Breathing heavily, I helped the old man to his feet again. "Come on, we have to get out of here." We stumbled out of the house and into my car. I drove as fast as I could to the nearest police station. The old man told them everything, how he had been kidnapped and held captive in that house for days. I never took another delivery that far out again. The experience left me shaken, but I was glad I had been there to help. Sometimes what seems like a normal delivery can turn into something much more dangerous.